When you don't take time to look at it through other people's eyes. Take some time and reflect on what you believe in your soul. Cause that is the key to life. You gotta let the negativity go.
Hello, and welcome back to the What the Fox podcast with your hosts, Lindsey Fox and Amber Ross. I'm excited today because we've got a wonderful guest with us, Miss Deb, who Lindsey will introduce to you. And the topic today is going over why asking for, receiving, and providing help isn't necessarily as easy as society would like us to believe. Lindsey, would you like to introduce Deb?
Yes, this is going to be a loaded topic, but yes, first we will definitely introduce Miss Deborah Grayson Riegel. And the reason why I feel like she is so important to talk to about this topic is because not only does she understand help in the context of her own life, but she also understands it in the scope of business professionals and organizational communication, which is something that if you can't necessarily relate to some of the personal topics that we're going to be bringing up today, I know that people are going to be able to connect with us in a work setting in some capacity. So Deborah is a keynote speaker and executive coach and consultant who has taught leadership communication for Wharton Business School, Duke Corporate Education, Columbia Business School's Women in Leadership Program, and the Beijing International MBA Program at Peking University. There's truly like nothing that she hasn't done.
I love that.
So she is also the co-author of Go to Help, 31 Ways to Offer, Ask for, and Accept Help, and Overcoming Overthinking, 36 Ways to Tame Anxiety for Work, School, and Life. And when I say co-author, it is because her daughter, Sophie Riegel, is a huge part of this entire project. So we are hoping to have Sophie join us for a future episode, but she is just as incredible as her mother. So Deb, welcome to What the Fox.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We are so happy to have you. We will be showcasing all of this stuff in our show notes, by the way, for our listeners who are not watching on YouTube. So they'll be able to get access to all the things there. But first and foremost, welcome. And we don't do like the scripted thing on this podcast.
Awesome. I didn't bring a script, so that's perfect.
Good. Wonderful. Because we'd ask you to rip it up.
Touche. It's so true. But honestly, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your background, whether that be culturally, whether that be educationally. I mean, like whatever you did pre-coaching, but something brought you to this world of coaching. So how did you get here?
Yeah. So I feel a little bit like Doogie Howser in that I started in this line of work really young. So when I was in high school, I did competitive speech and debate.
Of course you did.
Yes, I know. Of course I did. And I spent every single day after school practicing public speaking. I spent every weekend going off to tournaments around the country. I spent every summer at speech camp, which is a very nerdy thing to admit.
Oh my gosh.
And my senior year of high school, I won the national championship in public speaking. The thing that's really interesting about that is that the person who won the year before me is Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. So
what?
So I had to compete against her my junior year, and she of course clobbered me. And then I was so glad she graduated, and I won my senior year.
Oh my gosh, we just started and there's already a plot twist.
Yeah. So, well, she's the plot twist. It's not really me. But so that in the same way that when she, had her acceptance speech, I think that's what they call it in the Oscars. I don't know what they call it when you become a Supreme Court justice, but that she mentioned the impact of speech and debate and thanked her speech coach and her speech team. I had the same sort of impact, which was learning a process for becoming a more compelling and concise and credible communicator is something that set me on this path. So when I was in college, I would come back in the summers and teach at speech camps. I also helped found the University of Michigan's first improv comedy troupe. And so that helped me have more confidence as a extemporaneous speaker.
Yes.
And little did I know that through college, through grad school, that this would be a through line of my career around communication skills. And it's sort of come full circle that being a speaker, helping people become better communicators, helping people manage the anxiety that comes with communicating is what I'm doing, 30 some years later. Yeah.
Right. Way to talk about succinct communication. You just summed up such a massive portion of your life in like
and
2
totally
seconds.
name dropped a cool new Supreme Court justice. So,
Hey,
yeah.
you just name drop away, my friend. And also, like, I am impressed on so many levels of your communication skills. And also, if I think back to high school, my mother forced me to take a speech class in high school
Yeah.
and then
Oh my
forced me to
gosh.
take another one. I had to take 3 of them. And
What?
in high school, like, the speech teacher was the football coach. And I remember having so much anxiety, and he was fantastic and phenomenal. And it helped me so much. But I remember sitting there and thinking, whew, this is a lot. And
Yeah.
you have turned it into a career, and now you're
Yeah.
helping people get over that feeling. So
That
that's
is
it.
exactly right. It was a
Wow.
lot. And I think the way you were describing how you might have felt in speech is how I would have felt had they put me on the math team or the chess team or any kind of sport team, right? Anything that required me to move in a, hand, eye, foot coordinated way. But this was my place. These were my people.
That is awesome. And I did not know this about you, Amber. So, Deb, Amber and I went to high school together, and I'm sitting here like, wait, we had a speech class offering?
We did.
Yeah,
We
no
did.
clue. I was too busy doing other weird things, I guess.
Well, and the fun
this
part
was my
is-
weird.
I love that weird though, because when we first joined, so for the benefit of the folks listening, we're talking about audio and making sure everybody can hear and just admiring Deb's ability to project. And the first speech we had to give in that class was in the football stadium. So we had to stand like on the field and be heard into the stadium. So I just think like so much goes into it that you
Wow.
don't even think about the impact in the rest of your life. Like you're not giving a speech right now. You're talking to 2 people on a podcast episode, but it carries and it is noticeable.
Well, I can share with you that it is the bane of the existence of anybody who's ever lived with me. So it would drive my brothers bananas because I was so loud. No joking, my parents actually thought I was hearing impaired growing up. They thought that I spoke so loudly because I couldn't hear myself. And I'm currently in my office, and my office does not yet have a door. And it is the biggest joke. There is nobody that should be in a room without a door. I mean, it's me.
More than you.
The people who I live with, whenever I'm on public transportation and I have to take a phone call, my inside voice is so painful that people usually think I'm dying. I'll be like, hello. And they're like, are you okay? Are you being murdered? And I was like, no, this is my inside voice. So
trying really hard.
I'm trying really hard. So I don't have an inside voice. I was getting a foot massage a couple of months ago, and they said, please use your spa voice. And I was like, I don't have that.
That doesn't
You
exist.
have no idea what that is.
Like,
I don't
do you
know.
know
I know
am?
that I don't have it. I wouldn't know how to have it, but I know I don't have a spa voice.
No, thank you. But I appreciate it. Like, thank you for the suggestion.
Yes. Not one of my options.
Oh, that is hysterical. That is so funny. And I can see it clearly.
I love it.
Yes. So, as we transition into coaching, and I'm thinking here, like public speaking is like one of the number one fears. I mean, it is the ultimate fear for so many people. And even like in the context of like being a therapist, there are so many teenagers and young adults that I work with where they really battle a ton of anxiety just around getting on the phone. Doing anything beyond just text messaging is so stressful. So, just to think about, between Amber and her speech class that I had no idea about, but then thinking about your daughter, Sophie, who, just for our audience and their awareness, Sophie is absolutely following in mom's footsteps in the sense that she was unable to join us today because she's actually in coaching school. But she is also a professional speaker.
She is. And she didn't like public speaking until there was a message around mental health stigma that she felt really, really connected to and was able to overcome or, even come to peace with her anxiety about speaking because she had a message that was so important.
Yes.
And on the flip side, her twin brother does improv, does theater, like all the things that I grew up with. I'm getting such pleasure in watching him really embrace those. And so they both came at it, but from different places.
Right.
Holy plot twist, Batman. Like, what?
I know we're going to be on a roll today.
I love
I can
that.
feel it. No, I think it's so cool because here, Sophie, how old is Sophie now?
Sophie and Jacob are 21.
Oh, well, sorry,
Yeah.
Sophie and Jacob. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, 21. And so now I'm thinking, now Sophie has contributed to several books now at this point. She does guest speaking or professional speaking at events
Yep.
and was a TEDx speaker over at Duke. She's had so many different things take place at already such a young age, but her story is pretty incredible. So I do hope that she can share.
Yes,
I mean,
I do too. And I will tell you, not to date stamp today, but she just started coaching school today.
right.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. Like she's just following right along. And this is while she's on what break from Duke?
Yeah, summer break from Duke. She's definitely going to win the What I Did with My Summer Vacation essay contest her senior year for sure.
I
love that.
Clearly. She's got an awesome story, so we definitely want to hear it sometime. But whenever I'm thinking of the book that you guys wrote together, I think that there's so many great little pearls of knowledge and wisdom. And you can tell that these little tidbits of wisdom are coming from lived experiences. Like this is not just a coach that's giving out textbook information. This is coming from hard heart work.
Thank you. That feels really meaningful. I don't have to live everything that I write about, but it feels more authentic to me when I can say, I have wrestled with this too. Like I'm not coming with solutions, I'm coming with lived experience.
Right. Because that's just it. Is that I feel whenever we're especially looking at whether it be the mental health standpoint, we look at professionals and just assume that they must have it all together, which is so laughable because we're humans too.
Yeah.
And same from like the business aspect. It's just, yes, you have your experiences. We make mistakes. We learn from them. We hopefully, reassess or assess the lessons learned and go from there. But what kind of led you into this particular book at this time to write Go to Help?
Yeah. So Go to Help is actually, I wouldn't call it a sequel, but I would call it an expanded chapter of the first book that Sophie and I wrote together. So the first book that we wrote together was called Overcoming Overthinking, 36 Ways to Tame Anxiety for Work, School, and Life. Little did we know when it came out 6 months before the pandemic that it would become the most, important topic on earth. So that was definitely a message meeting its moment. And I never would have wanted a pandemic as a great marketing strategy, but it happened.
But you got one.
But we got one. So yes, thank you, world, for conspiring to get our book out there. But one of the top, so we spent the last 2 years really talking about mental health and anxiety and helping your colleagues with mental health and anxiety. And one of the parts of the Overcoming Overthinking program and book is the idea of that there are multiple ways of helping people other than let me tell you what to do or let me fix it for you, or and its cousin, let me fix you, right? And so most people think of help in one of those categories, and Sophie and I were really clear that actually help requires a great deal of nuance and fluency. And whether you are somebody who is trying to help somebody in the office, as a parent, as a partner, as a friend, or you are somebody who is asking for help, the more help fluent you are, the more you understand all of the different kinds of ways that you could offer and ask for help, the better you're going to be a help provider and a help recipient.
Oh, yeah.
I love the word you just used, help fluent. Like that concept of understanding beyond empathizing, beyond trying to fix, like that sticks out to me. Can you unpack it a little bit?
Absolutely. So in the same way that somebody who isn't fluent in a language has a very limited vocabulary and also has to lean into the couple of words they know, we have a helping language as well, which is, anything from, as you said, empathizing, fixing it for you, providing direction, offering resources, asking powerful questions, helping you take a break, helping you self-evaluate. But if we only have a couple of go-to words for help, we are only going to help in a very limited way. And as our challenges in our personal lives, in our professional lives, in our world become more complex, we need more complex offerings around what really feels like help. So I think a lot about, I mean, this book was written during the pandemic, and we were thinking a lot about the kinds of help that people didn't even know they would ever need during the pandemic, right?
Oh,
how many
yeah.
parents ever thought that they were going to have to become teachers, right?
Mm-mm.
How many,
None.
I think about the time that I had to ask my neighbor for toilet paper. Right. I was out of toilet paper. So asking for toilet paper, the kinds of helps we needed, we never could have anticipated. And the people who got through the pandemic are the people who accepted that help was normal, natural, and necessary.
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
Survival of the fittest in that case came with the help fluency, the willingness to ask for help. And I actually, on the note of speaking about how help is so surprisingly complex, I think that an element to that is understanding there does need to be a level of humility at play to ask for help and to be willing to receive help, because I do think that's something that gets in the way so often with us as human beings, and particularly in the Western world, with how our society is so centered around being an independent individual.
Yes, absolutely. And so the big chunk of the book, right? So a chunk of the book is about the strategies, the 31 strategies, but a big chunk of it is how we can change our mindsets about what it means to ask for help and accept help. And one of the things that I found really fascinating was the idea that starting at around age 7, we start to associate admitting that we don't know something or that we need somebody's help with reputational costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm way older than 7, right? So I have had decades of believing that, right? So those neural pathways are well worn.
That's right.
That it could come at a cost to my reputation to say, I don't know how to do this myself.
Right.
And as you had pointed out, think about how often we are saying to our, young people, no, you got to learn to do that yourself, or good for you, you did that all by yourself. And we mean it with the best of intentions, but it also can be misinterpreted and then becomes undermining when we think, oh, the only way I can demonstrate success is by doing something myself.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We actually have an episode about resiliency that touches on this, and how while we as a society we consider resiliency to be extra positive and wonderful, there can be a toxic element to that, because when we're constantly offering praise to say, you've done such a wonderful job all by yourself, and we're putting those imposed expectations for the person to constantly be strong, do what they need to do independently, you're also kind of hardwiring that learning or in conditioning that person to just suck it up, deal with it, sit in it, and move through it, but don't ask for help over it. And that's another social norm issue that Amber and I have discussed in the past, for sure.
And I just literally read an article this morning that came into my inbox that reminds me of that, which is that we as a society, and I'll say that as broadly as necessary, think of hope as universally positive, right? You've got to have hope. We need to be hopeful. And in fact, it actually can prevent us from getting out of situations that will not get better.
Woo! That is a good one.
I mean, this is my life we're talking about here.
I was like, you just pinged into Lindsey's whole world right there. Lindsey, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I mean, just the immediate thing that came to mind is the fact that I held on to, oh my gosh, so much hope that my marriage was going to work out. I had so much hope and so much faith that things were going to change, because the messaging I was receiving from my partner was that, yes, I'm willing to change. And so while the words were there, the actions never followed suit, but I kept listening to the words and holding on to hope. I kept just hoping that things would work out. And that kept me actually in a really toxic and emotionally abusive relationship for a really, really long time, in the name of hope. And That really does sit with me to think, wow, you just read an article about that this morning.
I just read an article about it. I'll send it to you. And as I'm thinking about our topic for today, one of the strategies that we talk about in the book is one way that you can help somebody is to support them as they admit something vulnerable or uncomfortable. Right. And so when you feel like you can say something like what you just said, like, I really fought for my marriage in the name of hope, and hope wasn't serving me. That's a form of helping, is to hold the space for you to feel safe to say, wow, that didn't turn out the way I'd wanted. And I'm going to learn from it, and it hurts.
And I love that we're here today as a power of 3 to role model what that must feel like for people and what that looks like, because that's absolutely true. It's just sometimes we need someone to just sit and be present with us and to hold the space. When I think about what you mentioned earlier too, about just this idea we want to fix things. And when we're looking at, in terms of the help aspect of, is it a technical problem? Is it a adaptive problem? Are we trying to offer logistics and like these mission oriented tit for tat type of things? Or is there an emotional need at play? And I feel that is an area where we struggle with that as humans, and being able to decipher a technical problem from a adaptive problem, and what requires like what we want versus what we need.
Yeah. And I think, again, coming back to the pandemic that I keep talking about as if it's behind us, but like wave 5 is in front of us, right? So our technical challenges, the challenges where there was like a missing puzzle piece and you snap it and get it solved, was like, how do I get Zoom up, right? How do I maybe get my groceries delivered? Those sorts of things. Everything else was really an adaptive challenge, something where you had never done it before. You had to make it up. You were running experiments. You figured out something that worked. It worked for 3 months or 6 months, and then it didn't, and you had to figure it out again.
Yeah.
And so those are not easy problems to know what kind of help you need. You need a variety of different kinds of help. And we also didn't know how to offer help other than to say, like, I'm not sure what you need, but I'll be here to help you figure it out. Though we don't know what figuring it out looks like.
And we're in it together.
And we're in it together.
We'll figure it out. We don't know the answers, but we'll work through it together.
That's right. That's right.
And separately, because we can't be together.
Yeah, right.
Virtually together.
Virtually together. Well, and again, sort of bringing it full circle, one of the strategies that we have in the book is really around body doubling, right? So one of the strategies is to do something with someone. And this is a strategy that Sophie and I use a lot, and you can do it virtually, you can do it in person. The strategy is actually born out of a grassroots strategy for people who have ADHD. And the idea behind it is that when you have ADHD, you are often distracted, you get bored easily, you can, hyper-focus on one thing and under-focus on something else. And so to have a body double, somebody who is literally present, they could be doing their taxes, right, while you're writing your novel, it doesn't matter. But the physical presence, or the virtual, even over Zoom presence of another person to help you stay accountable and focused to yourself, is one of our helping strategies. And Sophie and I do this all the time. When she is wrapping up packages for her thrift business, I'll be sitting here writing an article, and it's just like, I just need another human so that I do the thing I'm supposed to do. And that's one of the helping strategies.
I use that strategy quite frequently, as a matter of fact, with my clinical documentation that takes me forever. Sometimes I just need to have another therapist on Zoom doing the same thing. And like, we're in it together. Like, the struggle is so real, and we're in it together. You do you, I do me, but I can see you.
It worked. Look, it worked when we were toddlers and we did parallel play. It can work for adults as well.
Absolutely. I was just going to say, we use it in my wellness coaching as well, where we open up Zoom lines for people to work out, quote unquote, in the gym together, even though we're all working out in our own homes, doing our own things. Like, nobody's sitting there policing what anyone is doing, but just knowing that other humans are in that moment with you is so powerful that you can, I find I push myself a lot harder when I know someone else is working out alongside me, and I don't allow myself to get as distracted. So that makes perfect sense.
Yep.
I love hearing all these perspectives, because here we've got Deb here who does the executive coaching. I do the life coaching. You do the wellness coaching, Amber. So it's just so interesting to hear all the different perspectives at play here, because I feel that all of these different strategies, they are helpful in all arenas of life. I mean, you can't make that stuff up. It's just, there's a lot of stuff in here that is a lot of very rich content. Amber, were you going to ask something earlier? I kind of saw your wheels turning a bit whenever she was speaking about
It's entirely possible, Lindsay, but I don't know.
That's so normalizing. Thank you. And in fact, my kids, when my kids start to say something and then they forget it, they call it pulling a mom. Right. They're like, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. I just pulled a mom. And I was like, this is really what I want to be known for. All right.
She thinks.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll take it. That is totally fine, because I think that the brain cells go with the children to make them smarter. So they can pull a mom.
Well, then my kids are so smart. I got nothing left. So I'll take it.
No, but I did want to kind of come back to the idea, Lindsay, I think you mentioned we're three strong women talking together about this concept of asking for, offering, and receiving help. And what pops in my head is when you mentioned that vulnerability piece and that humility piece, being able to accept the help. And I know you have a pretty strong history of asking for and receiving help. And I didn't know if you wanted to share a little bit of that.
Oh, yes. So asking for help, I think that was something I wasn't always conditioned to doing. This was a learned thing over a period of time that took a lot of hard experiences and then some wisdom to kick in, which actually ties into an aspect of this book as well, because one of the 6 concepts at the beginning of this book talks about you don't need to do it all by yourself, and you shouldn't. And as someone who was raised very much as a parentified child, I was very much the person that was the fix-it person, the doer, the problem solver. And asking for help was not a space that I was invited to be in. So when I think about the way that you phrase that question, I definitely understand you're holding space for who I am today. And I think if we're getting into humility, it's important for people who might just be tuning in to understand I have not always been this way. It took hard heart work of my own to get where I am today. But I would say the massive epiphany or aha moment that came around, I can't do this by myself, and I need to ask help, and I need to figure out how to ask for help in a way where I can receive what I really need, not what I want, was truly within those final, I would say, 8 months before I left my spouse at the time, trying to figure out how do I go about doing this, and who do I need to go to for help to ensure that I can leave safely, frankly, is the right word. I believe that asking for help saved my life. And I didn't have that awareness beforehand, but I also realized very quickly that when I stopped trying to force puzzle pieces to fit and to make it what I wanted, and to focus on what I needed, what my soul needed, what I needed, I learned I needed to get really honest with myself, and therefore get really honest in saying to another person, I need help with this. I'm in a situation that I don't know how to get out of, and I'm finding that it's really challenging. I'm a problem solver. I'm really good at strategizing, and I'm feeling stuck. Can you help me with this thing? There were a lot of technical problems that needed to be solved, actually, and that was so as Deb highlighted those pieces, or the differences between those challenges. I was up against a lot of those technical challenges and trying to figure out how can I resolve these technical challenges, and who can help me hone in on these specific things. But then the adaptive challenges were that was a whole nother beast as well. But it was also, it required a level of humility and being able to decipher who can fill which role. And I wasn't always good at figuring that piece out either.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to just say, I'm so glad you're here and safe. Like, let me just put that out there. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Literally, physically.
I am too.
Metaphorically,
Me three.
virtually. Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're safe. You must have, I'm making an assumption here, but at some point you must have built up enough deposits in your relationship bank accounts that you knew that you could call on people. You didn't start from scratch saying, oh, I wish I had been nicer and kinder to people because now I need them, right? You must have already been, paying it into your relationship so that you could draw on it when necessary. And I also think, and you'll tell me you'll tell me how this lands for you.
Okay.
It also reminds me of how often many of us wait to ask for help until we're in dire straits.
Oh, yes. Yes. Well, so actually, I love that you're bringing up the fact that, hey, maybe you had a built up support system leading into this decision. Well, so I think in my world at that time, so this is now maybe a year prior to me leaving, I actually felt I was in a space of cognitive dissonance and a lot of denial, in the sense that I wasn't fully holding space for what I was in. And it was, in fact, the people around me that could see what I was blind to, because I had normalized it in such a way that that was just how my life was.
Yeah.
So to have the people around me, and also keeping it, and this is why I say, do therapists have it all worked out? Absolutely not. I was a therapist then too, and I'm a therapist now, but now I just have a little bit more wisdom tucked under the belt. So I might be a little bit better at my job now, but it's a lot different when you're trying to help yourself in comparison to another person. And I think that's another huge part of this conversation, because other people in my life, whether they worked in the mental health space or not, they were able to see things that I couldn't, and they were able to offer what they perceived as help to me to increase my insight and awareness. And it was those early level conversations. Well, I say early, it was actually quite late into our relationship, but early from in this stage of leaving, where I said, wow, you see it this way? Like, this is your perspective. This is really interesting. But I was able, I'm thinking of one particular conversation with one particular person who I respected a tremendous amount. And I knew that this conversation was really hard for this person to have with me. I knew this person made a judgment call of what's going to happen in our professional worlds, or our, even in our friendship. Like, how is this going to sit? I don't know, but I'm willing to risk it. And she risked it, and I appreciate it to this day. And so I think that's where the offering of help is also really critical, because in those moments, I actually didn't even know to ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah. It was being offered, and you all of a sudden said, oh, there's somebody here trying to help me, and you can either resist it or go with it.
Right.
And it's interesting, as I'm hearing you describe that, I'm thinking about, in addition to the strategy of, helping somebody say something vulnerable or uncomfortable, two of the other strategies in the book I heard this person help you with. So one of them is helping you see your blind spots, right?
Yes.
That's one of the ways that we can help someone or ask for help, is what do you see that I am not seeing? And the other is helping somebody see what's known as solution aversion, right? And so solution aversion is when I have an inkling that getting this solved will actually be more painful, complex, horrible than the current state, I'm willing to accept the current state.
Yes, I will settle for less because it's available.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I'm averse to the solution, and your solution was hard as hell.
Oh, hell yes.
Yep.
Is the
And so
absolute.
I'll keep that. Was and is, right?
Is.
So I'll keep the
Right.
current state rather than deal with a really hard solution.
Right.
So you had help from some really help fluent, highly nuanced helpers, and good for you for seeing that. I don't know that I would have seen it.
You say that therapists don't have it all figured out. And I'm not going to say that therapists do have it all figured out, but I do think that in that field, you're more in tune to that helping piece, because this was a coworker, right? Is that what you mentioned? It was somebody in that coaching
This person
realm,
was
or
someone. This was someone in the therapeutic realm. They themselves are not a therapist, but they themselves had their own lived experience and could see all the red flags,
all of the writing on the walls. Okay.
that I really could not. And so they were very help fluent and still are very help fluent in terms of their professional lives and the role that they serve in the community. But they knew enough to speak up, and I'm very grateful for that. But it in all fairness, it took several months for the conversation to catch up with me. So and I think that's another piece of it, is that we're not always willing to receive it in the time that it lands.
Wait, you mean you didn't like accept that feedback with open arms and just like jump at the opportunity to fix all the things?
Right.
I had to sit with it. I really had
what?
I had to sit with the shit, man.
Right.
I had to sit with the shit. I was like, this is uncomfortable, and I feel like she's onto something, and I need to sit with it a little bit longer, because it was some of the word choices, some of the labeling that she used. I was getting very hung up. So me and my analytical brain, I was getting very hung up on semantics and the words that were used and the descriptors. And I was like rationalizing and justifying and all these things that contribute to our self-limited beliefs and trying to make sense of things. So yeah, there are elements of that at play, but I had to sit through it and do a little bit of my own research. And then also that side of me needed to know, okay, I'm trying to work through all the kinks and do all the things before I can move to phase 2.
Yeah. Well, and I call that out in jest a little bit, but also, sorry, Deb, just to point out the fact that like it's normal to receive information and for it to be uncomfortable, and for you to still hold on to that information and not immediately release it. Because I think a lot of the time we just want to go, oh no, I don't like that. I'm not going to hold on to that. Goodbye. Like, sometimes it's uncomfortable.
And I think that's from the perspective of helpers, right? I mean, we're all of these, right? We're all helpers, help receivers, that sort of thing. And I think that one of a really important way to be a good helper is to separate the help you're offering from the speed at which it is may or may not be applied, right? So if I have said, may I help you? And somebody says yes, and then you offer the help, just because you don't see the person make the change or take the help doesn't mean that it isn't marinating, right? This is something I learned as a coach, which is that the impact of the coaching conversation happens between the sessions, not in the session.
Absolutely.
Right? So creating that oxygen for it to grow. Yes. And I use this as a parent. So with my son, Jacob, when I want to share with him a new perspective for him to consider, I will ask him if I can do that, right? May I share a different perspective? And then I'll say, here's my request. Don't say anything. I don't need you to say, okay, mom, or like, that's ridiculous. Please just at the end of it, just like go. So I know that like, but I don't need you to say anything.
A little grumble.
Right. Like a little like grunt, right? Just, I don't want his natural defensiveness. And by natural, I mean like natural for any 21-year-old.
Yes,
of course.
I don't want his natural defensiveness to force him to feel like he needs to say yay or nay. And I would say more often than not, when I give him the space to not even have to react to it at all, 100% of the time he considers it, and part of the time he doesn't. But I'll take the 100% of the time that he considers it. Yes. And my contribution to that is giving him the space and the pride to do it his own way.
Mm-hmm. Right. Empowering decision-making and control by meeting him where he's at, and then empowering him to go forward with that. Yes. That is a huge part.
The next book will be called Your Grunt is a Gift.
That'll be Grunt is a Gift. I love that.
Actually, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, all right, trademark is mine now. Yeah.
Right. You got it.
I got it.
The level of respect that you showed him in that like outline of a conversation to that's amazing. And that's something I think we could all aspire to in not just the parent-child relationship, but friendships, in working relationships, before we just dump our idea on someone or share something, even out of like the goodness of our heart to say, oh, I have this great thing and you should consider it.
Yeah.
Asking for that permission and knowing that they're in a space to receive it is a huge part of the conversation.
Absolutely. And I think one of the hardest ways that I witnessed this lesson being learned was, so I think it was 3 years ago at this point, my brother and my sister-in-law had a baby, and his name was Henry. And when Henry was born, it was pretty clear that he had some hearing impairment, and immediately the suggestions of help came in. You should teach him sign language. No, don't teach him sign language. Get him a cochlear implant, all these sorts of things. And my brother and sister-in-law were being flooded with like, we want to help our baby and people are telling us what to do. And they didn't ask, people were just telling them. And then it actually turned out that Henry had a very rare genetic disorder, and it was clear that he was not going to live. Right. And so all of that help that was put into how should you teach this child speech, everybody now needed to figure out, how do I help my brother, my family member, my friend whose baby is going to die, right? And everybody wanted to help, and there is no help for that.
No.
Right? There is no help when your baby is going to die. And so to watch the pain of the helpers not be able to help, and the pain of the recipients knowing that no help would help, was just breathtaking.
I'm holding space for this moment for a lot of reasons, but Deb, something that you do not know about Amber is that she actually has a sweet baby boy who is not so much of a baby anymore, but
he's
Amber,
a teenager.
And actually, Amber just had a major feat today, by the way. She and her husband raised $10,000 for Make-A-Wish Foundation. They hit their goal today.
Oh,
huge.
Congratulations. Send me the link, please.
I'll be glad to. And thank you. So my son was the catalyst for us getting involved in Make-A-Wish. He was born with basically his skull was fused together too early. So his brain did not have space to develop. So they had to go in and remove part of his skull to allow space for him to grow and develop. It's called craniosynostosis. And I had never heard of it before the doctor said, hey, like we need to talk. And I just remember, like, as you were sharing, I don't know if you saw me like clutch my chest, but like, I remember all of the help flooding in when we announced it, because I took space before I announced it, because I was like, oh crap, like I cannot tell all of the people the things. But as soon as we made the announcement, like all of the well-meaning people showed up and they're like, what can we do to help? What, like, here's the things you need to do. I went on Google and I found this, and this is what, and I'm like, hey, pump the brakes. Like all I need for you to do is just, reach out and ask me how I'm doing. Just like, invite me out to dinner. Let's just be normal humans together. Like, I am a mom. Yes, my son is getting ready to have a very scary surgery. I am not okay. Like, I am still to this day not okay with it. We are potentially looking at a second surgery now. So I'm like, all of the feels. But I don't love it. I love that people want to show up. I love that people want to help, but it can also be devastating. Yeah, you appreciate it.
The intention.
Well, and then you have a second job, which is to get back to all the people who are flooding you with well-meaning to redirect the energy, right? Yes. And like that could have been energy that you put into your son and your like that's energy
self-care.
Self-care, please.
Yeah, self-care. What? Come on now. Right?
Yeah. It's amazing how all of that intertwines. And for us, obviously our outcome has been very positive. My son is very healthy. He's very sassy. He's very strong. I know whatever next stages in his journey, we're going to face it together. We're going to face it as a family, and we're in good hands.
Yeah.
That does not mean it's not stressful. It does not mean that I'm still not like reaching out to Lindsey in a panic and flurry because I just have random bouts of, but what if this?
Yeah.
But I do think it's important to just hold space. And I think both of you have said that today on this call, that like, we're going to hold space for this thing. And the importance, that is a form of help, to just say, you know what, I'll sit in it with you. Like we can sit here. We don't have to talk. We can just have space and have a moment to like experience this thing together. And I think that goes back to the body doubling, right? Like
part of body doubling, we can both be really frustrated together.
Yes.
And, helping somebody admit something uncomfortable is certainly, holding space is part of that as well. And one of the helping strategies is called promote a pause, which is rather than do something, do nothing.
Oh, I like that. Let's do that.
Let's do that.
It is good because you have to pause. Like, I think, Lindsey, you see this in me a lot, I'm sure. When I get stressed by something, or I have something pop up that is quote unquote a problem to be solved, I get really invested in all of the ways that we could possibly solve the problem. And I forget to
solution focused. Yes.
Yeah. I'm real solution focused, but sometimes I forget to pause and really analyze what the problem is.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm solving a variety of things that may or may not fix. I'm just like, we'll throw spaghetti at the wall. But that pause is important in the process. It sure is. And I want to just, like, from a big picture perspective, I want to acknowledge that we are 3 people who are surrounded by so much help. Right? Like all 3 of us have talked about, I got help from this person, help from that person. And I bet that there are people listening feeling like they don't have that. And I'm going to push them. I'm going to sort of push them on an assumption that you don't have people to help you. And, one of the activities that I do in corporate workshops is I say, like, without even thinking about it, I want you to name 5 people who would help you right now, regardless of what it was. And in fact, would be insulted finding out that you needed help and that you didn't ask them. And people, I love that.
They're like, they don't even stop at 5. They're like, I got 15 people who would be really mad at me to find out that I needed help and didn't come to them.
Right. I love that you're highlighting this, because while in a bit of my disclosure, I was emphasizing people that were available. When it was time for me to leave, when push came to shove and things actually escalated quite a bit, a lot of the people who I thought would be there weren't. And I'm bringing this up because I think that, Deb, you're hitting the nail on the head with something, because there are these moments when we feel like those people are not there, or they're not showing up, or I don't have those people. And I'm not saying this to turn the focus on that aspect of my story per se, but rather to highlight that ways to navigate that in my world became the power of social media, which we in this podcast, we do kind of like shoot the
we like
shit
to poke
and
fun.
we do diss social media quite a bit about like some of the negative things, but again, this is a huge positive where I was able to post in community groups and saying, I need help. Can someone recommend a moving company? Can someone tell me where I can acquire XYZ? Does anyone have a recommendation of this kind of attorney or advisor or this or that? And I was able to get help in those ways. And so I agree, there are a lot of helpers and offerings. And one of the hardest parts at time can be just leaning into the discomfort and asking for the help. What a healing conversation this has been today, by the way.
I know. I feel like we went off on several tangents, but they were all so important and so interconnected. I love, Deb, thank you for sharing all of your wisdom. I have it on my to-do list. I'm going to buy my copy of your book because I need it, as well as the first one.
I'm going to donate on behalf of your son.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll share that link with you. So just a side note, the Make-A-Wish fundraiser is part of the Trailblaze Challenge. So my husband and I, a week from tomorrow, will be hiking 26.5 miles in honor of the Make-A-Wish kids and the strength that they show. So that is, our goal was to get to 10K before that marathon hike. And it's just been a beautiful process.
And that is amazing. And I just have to say, I felt my solution aversion kick in when I heard 26 miles. I was like, oh my God, I'd rather just write a check.
Yes. And she's exceeded I mean, that's the most
That's
amazing part.
amazing.
They've exceeded the $10,000. I mean, just
Well,
Thank you.
can I just say that help strategy number 31 out of 31 is celebrate.
Yes, I love
do
that.
it.
I love it. I
We
love
bet
that
our
we get to
spirit
celebrate
fingers.
that today. Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Very
Oh my
cool.
goodness. Deb, did you have any final thoughts or final nuggets that you wanted to share with the audience today?
I'm good. I want to just honor where this conversation took us and
Good.
follow its lead. And for whatever you say about social media, I mean, Lindsey, you and I met over LinkedIn.
We did.
Right?
We
So-
did. And so
Bonkers.
again, we talk about sort of like the false reality of social media, but you're right. We've developed a beautiful friendship as a result of social media. And
Yes.
and frankly, that's how Amber and I reconnected after many moons of not talking.
It's
We've
true.
now reconnected and have this
Yeah.
podcast. So it's just amazing how life comes full circle when we are willing to ask for help, offer help, receive help, and then just allowing the universe work its magic.
Amen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Deb. And Lindsey, thank you for setting this up. This was an amazing conversation. I loved
Thanks,
it.
everyone.
Hey, listen, y'all have been lovely. And Deb, you and your daughter are welcome to come back anytime. We look forward to it. And we will absolutely include all of your information in the show notes. Thank you to all of our listeners. And we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Bye.
And we all sing, everything is gonna be just fine. It's gonna fall into place. The sun is gonna set on your terrible day.